I never thought Easter Sunday would end with blood on our living room wall and my husband's temple split open. Yet that Wednesday afternoon, when my phone buzzed with my son's name, something in my chest tightened before I even answered. My name is Alice Roberts. I'm 62 years old, and I've lived in the same white house on the corner of Pinehurst Avenue for 34 years. You know the one, with the leaning mailbox my husband George keeps meaning to fix, and the apple tree that blooms every April, like it doesn't know the world has moved on without it. George and I built our life here. We raised Christian here. We watched the neighborhood fill with young families, then watched those families grow old, then watched new families move in with their solar panels and electric cars. But inside our walls, not much changed. Same furniture, same routines, same quiet mornings with coffee and the newspaper. Until that phone call. "Mom?" Christian's voice came through cheerful, but in that careful, distant way he'd perfected over the past few years. The kind of cheerful that sounds rehearsed. "We're coming for Easter." I should have been happy. I imagined my granddaughter Lily running through the backyard, maybe helping me hide Easter eggs. I imagined laughter, the smell of roasted lamb, Christian and George talking on the porch like they used to. But he said, "We're coming." Not "can we come?" Not "would you like us to visit?" The difference is small. But when you've been a mother for 38 years, you learn to hear what isn't said. "Oh, that's wonderful, sweetheart," I managed, wiping my hands on my apron. "We'll make a big dinner. Your father will be so—" "Vanessa's bringing wine," he interrupted. "A really good one from Napa. You'll love it." And there it was. When Vanessa brings the good wine, it's never just for celebration. It's a signal. I glanced toward the living room where George sat at his old piano, playing Clair de Lune. He only played that piece when he was thinking. Really thinking. The kind of thinking that meant he was 3 steps ahead of a problem I hadn't even seen yet. "That's very thoughtful of her," I said, though my stomach had turned to stone. After we hung up, I walked to the living room doorway and watched my husband's fingers move across the keys. He didn't look up, but he knew I was there. "They're coming for Easter," I said. "I know." His hands didn't stop moving. I heard. "George, it'll be fine, Alice." Finally, he looked at me. His eyes were calm, almost peaceful, but I'd been married to this man for 36 years. I knew that look. It was the same look he had when he'd found termites in the foundation and spent 2 months quietly replacing every beam without telling me until it was done. "What did you do?" I whispered. He smiled, soft and sad. "What I had to." The next 3 days, I cleaned like my mother taught me. Corners first, then the shine. I baked bread, marinated the lamb, pressed the linen napkins I only used twice a year. By Saturday night, my knees ached, but the house looked like memory itself, the way it used to look when Christian was small and everything felt possible. George helped me polish the silverware at the kitchen table. He hummed along to an old Louis Armstrong record, but his eyes were somewhere else. "You're going to tell me eventually," I said, buffing a fork that was already gleaming. "Tell you what?" "Whatever you've been planning." He set down the spoon he was holding and reached across the table to take my hand. His palm was warm, calloused from years of weekend projects and garden work. "6 months ago," he said quietly, "someone tried to access my investment account from an IP address in Christian's neighborhood." The fork slipped from my fingers and clattered against the table. "I didn't tell you because I wasn't sure," he continued. "But I called Harold Green, asked him to look into it. Harold was our lawyer, had been for 20 years. And I've been preparing, just in case." I thought about the new doorbell camera George had installed last month, the one he said was for security. I thought about the stack of papers he'd been reviewing in his study, papers he'd shuffled away whenever I walked in. "George, what are you expecting to happen?" He squeezed my hand. "Nothing we can't handle together." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying moments from the past year. Vanessa asking about property values over Thanksgiving dinner. Christian seeming distant, distracted, always checking his phone. The way Vanessa's eyes would linger on our furniture, our artwork, like she was taking inventory. 3 months ago, she'd casually mentioned that our neighborhood was getting so hot right now. She'd said it like she was doing us a favor by noticing. I'd smiled and nodded because that's what I always did. I smoothed things over. I kept the peace. But something George said echoed in my head. Just in case. In case of what? Easter Sunday arrived with perfect weather, bright sun, cool breeze, the apple tree in full bloom. I set the table with our good china, the set my grandmother had given us as a wedding present. Each plate had tiny hand-painted roses around the rim. At 2 o'clock, I heard tires on gravel. Through the kitchen window, I watched their black SUV pull into our driveway. Vanessa stepped out first, dressed in designer linen that probably cost more than our monthly grocery bill. Her hair was highlighted to perfection, her sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. Christian climbed out next, juggling a gift bag and Lily's backpack. He looked tired, older than 38. When had the lines around his eyes gotten so deep? Then Lily tumbled out, all 8 years old and flying hair, and my heart cracked open the way it always did when I saw her. "Grandma!" She ran across the lawn and crashed into me with the force of pure love. I held her tight, breathed in her apple-scented shampoo, and felt tears prick my eyes. "Hi, sweet girl. I missed you." "I missed you too." She pulled back and grinned. "I made you something at school. It's in the car." "Can't wait to see it." Then Vanessa was there, air kissing my cheek without actually touching it. "Alice, you look wonderful. Doesn't she look wonderful, Christian?" "Great, Mom." Christian hugged me quickly, almost nervously. His cologne was different, expensive. Everything about them was expensive now. Vanessa held up a bottle of wine like she was presenting a trophy. "Cabernet Sauvignon, 20-year reserve from Napa. I figured we'd bring something special. It's not every day we get to sit down together like this." The way she said every day felt pointed, like it was our fault they didn't visit more. I glanced at George, who'd appeared on the porch. He nodded at them, polite as always, but I saw the slight tightness around his mouth. Come in," I said, forcing brightness into my voice. "Everything's almost ready." Dinner started pleasantly enough. Lily told us about her school play, how she'd played a sunflower and forgot her line, but the teacher said she did great anyway. Christian talked about a project at his architectural firm, something about sustainable design and LEED certification. Vanessa laughed at her own stories, her voice filling our quiet dining room with a kind of aggressive cheerfulness. But underneath it all was a hum, faint but insistent, the kind of hum you feel before a thunderstorm. I served dessert, lemon cake, Lily's favorite, and watched Christian push his slice around his plate. He wasn't eating. He was waiting. After dessert, they moved to the living room. George poured coffee. I brought out cream and sugar, my hands steady despite the tension climbing my spine. That's when Christian cleared his throat. I knew that, throat clear. It was the same one he'd used at 16 when he needed to confess he'd crashed the car. At 22 when he dropped out of grad school. At 30 when he'd announced he was marrying Vanessa after knowing her 6 months. "Mom, Dad," he began, setting his coffee cup down with exaggerated care. "Vanessa and I have been talking. About the house." I felt George go still beside me. "What about it?" I asked, though I already knew. Somehow, I already knew. Vanessa leaned forward, her smile soft and concerned. "We're just worried about you two, that's all. This house is so big. What if something happened? The stairs, the maintenance, all those bills." She let it hang there, like she was doing us a favor by worrying. "We're managing fine," George said quietly. "I know you are," Christian said quickly. "It's just, Vanessa's parents just sold their place in Portland. They're looking to relocate, and we thought it would be perfect," Vanessa finished. "They could move in here, help with chores, be nearby in case of emergencies. And you two wouldn't have to worry about anything." Perfect. That word. The one people use when they're about to dismantle your life and call it kindness. I looked at Lily, who was coloring in the corner, oblivious. Then at Christian, who couldn't meet my eyes. Then at Vanessa, whose smile had taken on a sharp edge. "We don't need tenants," I said, keeping my voice gentle. Not tenants, Vanessa laughed. Family. She reached over and touched my hand. Her fingers were cold. We just want to make sure you're comfortable, that you're taken care of. The word comfortable landed like a slap. We are comfortable, I said. Something flickered across Vanessa's face. Christian shifted in his seat, caught between his mother and his wife, choosing silence like always. Alice. Vanessa's voice dropped, became confidential, like we were girlfriends sharing secrets. You're sitting on a $2 million property. You could help your family instead of just sitting here. It's not practical. There it was. The truth, dressed up in concern. I felt heat rise in my chest, but I kept my voice level. We've helped our family plenty, Vanessa. Maybe now we'd just like some peace. Her laugh was sharp, quick, not reaching her eyes. Peace, she repeated like it was a luxury we hadn't earned. That's a very expensive kind of peace, don't you think? George set his coffee cup down. The sound was soft, but somehow it cut through everything. You've said enough, he told Vanessa. His voice was calm, dangerously calm. Her expression tightened. Excuse me? We're not selling. We're not handing anything over. This conversation is finished. For a moment, no one breathed. Lily's crayon stopped moving. Christian's face went pale. Then Vanessa's smile disappeared. The mask dropped, and what I saw underneath made my blood run cold. You're being selfish, she said. Not loudly, almost conversationally. You'd rather hoard what you have than think about your own son's future, about Lily's future. Vanessa, Christian started, but she cut him off with a look. I felt my pulse pounding in my ears. All those years of biting my tongue, of swallowing disappointment, of being the good mother, the understanding mother, all of it rose up in my throat. But before I could speak, George pulled something from his jacket pocket. A manila folder. He placed it on the coffee table between us with the same care you'd use handling dynamite. Before we continue, he said, his voice still eerily calm, I think there's something you should see. Christian's eyes went wide. Dad? What? George opened the folder. Inside were printed pages, emails, screenshots, what looked like bank statements. 3 months ago, George said, someone attempted to access my investment account from an IP address in your neighborhood, Christian. When that didn't work, they tried a different approach. He pulled out a sheet of paper and slid it toward Vanessa. It was an email from Christian's account to someone named Robert Miller, Vanessa's father. The subject line read, Re-Future Inheritance Planning. The room went silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. That's... Christian's voice cracked. That's not what it looks like. Then what is it, son? George asked. Vanessa snatched the paper, her face flushing. You were spying on us? I was protecting what's mine, George said. There's a difference. He pulled out another page. This one made my stomach drop. It was a text message screenshot. Vanessa's name at the top. Sent to someone saved as Mom. Once they're in a nursing home, we can finally sell that house and get the lake property. Just need to be patient. The words swam in front of my eyes. You... I couldn't finish. Couldn't breathe. This is taken out of context. Vanessa stood up, her voice shaking with rage. You can't just... I can, George said. And I did. Because I'm not a fool, Vanessa. And neither is my wife. Christian put his head in his hands. Oh, God. Is it true? I whispered, looking at my son. Did you know about this? He wouldn't look at me. That was answer enough. Vanessa's hands were shaking. You people are sitting on millions while we're struggling with Lily's private school tuition, the mortgage. We paid for Lily's school, I said, my voice barely audible. All 3 years, $28,000. That was a loan, Vanessa shot back. We were going to pay you back. George pulled out another document. A canceled check. The memo line read, Gift for Lily's education. Funny, he said. The check says gift. Christian stood up abruptly, knocking his coffee cup. Brown liquid spread across the white tablecloth like a stain. Vanessa, we need to go, he said, his voice strangled. No! She whirled on him. No, we're not going anywhere. They're trying to manipulate you, Christian. Can't you see that? I see everything, Christian said quietly. I see what I should have seen months ago. How dare you? Vanessa turned back to us, her face twisted with fury. You people have no idea what it's like. You had everything handed to you. We're trying to build a life, trying to give Lily opportunities. By taking ours, I said. The words came out steady, cold, nothing like my usual voice. Vanessa stared at me like I'd slapped her. You came into our home, I continued, smiled to our faces, broke bread at our table, and plotted to take everything we built. And you have the audacity to call us selfish. Mom, Christian tried, but Vanessa wasn't done. She reached for the folder, trying to grab the evidence, her movements sharp and frantic. George pulled it back. Don't. Give it to me. She lunged forward. Christian grabbed her arm. Vanessa, stop. She jerked away from him, her elbows swinging wide. It happened so fast. Her arm hit the wine bottle, the expensive Napa Cabernet she'd brought. The bottle tipped, fell, rolled off the table. Christian tried to catch it, missed. The bottle hit the hardwood floor. Red wine exploded outward like blood. Glass shattered, and one piece, one single glinting shard, flew upward in a perfect arc and caught George on his left temple. I saw the red bloom, saw him touch his head, saw his fingers come away crimson. Everything stopped. George, I rushed to him, my hands shaking. Oh, God. George. It's all right, dear, he said quietly, pressing a napkin to the cut. His voice was steady, but blood was seeping through the white linen. Lily started crying. Christian stood frozen, his face ashen. And Vanessa just stared at her hands like she couldn't understand how they'd betrayed her. George reached into his pocket with his free hand, pulled out his phone, typed something with one thumb while blood dripped down his face. I heard the soft sound of a message being sent. Then he looked up at me, and despite everything, the blood, the broken glass, the shattered remains of our family scattered across the floor, he smiled, just slightly. Phase 1 complete, he murmured. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't chaos. This was the plan. This was exactly what George had been waiting for. The police arrived 17 minutes later. I know because I watched the kitchen clock while I held a clean towel against George's temple, watching red seep through white terry cloth for the third time. Officer Rebecca Johnson was in her 40s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense way of moving through our living room, stepping carefully around the broken glass and wine-stained carpet. She took statements while her partner photographed the scene. Ma'am, she turned to Vanessa, can you walk me through what happened? Vanessa had transformed. The fury was gone, replaced by trembling hands and wide, tear-filled eyes. It was an accident, she whispered. I was just reaching for something and my arm hit the bottle. I never meant— The bottle was on the table, George said calmly. He was sitting now, refusing to go to the hospital despite my protests. Out of reach. She lunged for something I was holding. Officer Johnson made a note. What were you holding, sir? Personal documents. George met her eyes. Financial records that belonged to my wife and me. Christian stood by the window, silent. He hadn't said a word since the bottle broke. Hadn't looked at any of us. Just stood there with Lily pressed against his leg, her face buried in his pants. Mr. Roberts, Officer Johnson said gently, do you want to press charges? The room held its breath. George looked at Vanessa, really looked at her. She stared back, mascara running, hands clasped like she was praying. Not tonight, he said finally, but I want this documented. All of it. Officer Johnson nodded. She handed Vanessa a warning citation for reckless endangerment, explained that any future incidents would result in arrest, then gave us a case number for our records. After they left, the house felt enormous and hollow. Christian carried Lily out to the car without saying goodbye. Vanessa followed, her designer heels crunching on the gravel driveway. I watched their taillights disappear down Pinehurst Avenue. Then I closed the door, turned the lock, and let myself break. George found me in the kitchen at midnight, staring at the red wine stain on the curtains. I'd scrubbed at it for an hour, but the fabric had absorbed it like a wound. "Leave it," he said softly, touching my shoulder. "I can't. I have to—" "Alice." He turned me around, his bandaged temple stark white in the dim light. "Leave it. Let it be evidence." "Evidence of what?" "Of the truth." I leaned against him, feeling every one of my 62 years settle into my bones. "What happens now?" "Now we wait," he said, "for them to show who they really are." The first 3 days were silent. No calls, no texts, nothing. On the 4th day, my phone rang at 6 a.m. Christian's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but mothers are mothers, even when their hearts are broken. "Mom." His voice was tight, controlled. "Something's wrong with my accounts." I said nothing. Dad froze everything. The joint savings, the investment account he put me on years ago, even the credit line. "Mom, I can't, my mortgage payment bounces tomorrow. What the hell is going on?" "Your father is protecting our assets," I said quietly. "Protecting? From me? I'm your son." "Are you?" The words came out before I could stop them. Silence on the other end. Then, "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I don't know who you are anymore, Christian. The son I raised wouldn't have plotted with his wife to put us in a nursing home so he could sell our house. We never—" He stopped, started again. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" More silence, long enough that I could hear his breathing, ragged and uneven. "Vanessa she gets ideas. She gets stressed about money, about Lily's future, and she says things she doesn't mean." "Does she throw bottles she doesn't mean to throw?" "That was an accident, Mom. You know it was." "What I know," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "is that your wife assaulted your father in our home. What I know is that you stood there and let it happen. What I know is that you've been lying to us for months." "I haven't been—" "Don't." I closed my eyes. "Please don't insult me with more lies. I'm too tired, Christian. I'm just too tired." I hung up before he could respond. George was standing in the doorway, 2 coffee mugs in his hands. He'd heard everything. "You did good," he said, handing me one. "I feel sick." "I know, but it needed saying." That afternoon, Vanessa called. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened to the message, George beside me, his hand warm on my knee. "Alice, this is insane." Her voice shook with controlled fury. "Do you have any idea what you're doing? Christian's under review at work because of irregularities in his finances. You're destroying your own son's career. How can you live with that?" George deleted the message. "She doesn't know I have copies of everything," he said calmly. "The attempted account access, the emails about inheritance planning, all of it." "What are you going to do with it?" He looked at me, his blue eyes clear and certain. "Whatever I have to." On the 7th day, a silver sedan pulled into our driveway. A man in his 50s stepped out, wearing khakis and a polo shirt. He carried a leather folder under one arm. George went to the door before I could ask who it was. "Mr. Bradley," he said, shaking the man's hand. "Right on time." My stomach dropped. "George?" "Alice, this is Thomas Bradley. He's a private investigator. I hired him 3 months ago." The world tilted sideways. Thomas Bradley smiled kindly. "Mrs. Roberts, I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. Your husband thought you should see my findings." We sat in the living room, the same room where the wine bottle had shattered 5 days ago. The stain on the wall looked darker now, like old blood. Thomas opened his folder. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. The first showed Vanessa and a man I didn't recognize sitting at an outdoor cafe, leaning close, her hand on his arm. "Who is that?" I whispered. "Kyle Anderson," Thomas said. "Works at the same marketing firm as Mrs. Roberts. They've been seen together at hotels on 4 separate occasions over the past 2 months." My hands went numb. The next photo showed them entering a Marriott. Another showed them on a park bench, kissing. "Christian knows," George said quietly. I looked up at him. "What?" Thomas pulled out more documents, text messages, printed from Christian's phone records, obtained through legal channels I didn't understand and didn't want to. One message from Christian to his best friend David, dated 6 weeks ago. I know about Vanessa and Kyle. Been following her. I can't divorce her, man. The prenup only protects what I had before marriage. If we split, she gets half of everything, including anything I inherit. I'm trapped. I couldn't breathe. He knew, I whispered. He knew she was cheating, and he still brought her here. Still tried to take our house, George finished, because he thought if he could get it in his name somehow, it would be protected from a divorce settlement. Oh, Christian. The words broke in my throat. Thomas pulled out one more document. More text messages, these between Vanessa and Kyle. Vanessa, once we get the house situation sorted, we can make our move. Christian will have assets. The divorce will be worth it then. Kyle, what if the old people don't sell? Vanessa, they will, or they'll end up in assisted living anyway. Either way, it's ours eventually. The old people, that's what we were to her. Obstacles with expiration dates. I stood up, walked to the window. Outside, the apple tree swayed in the spring breeze, innocent and oblivious. Why didn't you tell me? I asked George. Because I needed to be sure. And I needed you to see them for who they really are, not who we wanted them to be. Thomas Bradley quietly packed up his folder. I'll leave these copies with you, if you need anything else. George walked him to the door. I heard them talking in low voices, heard the car pull away. When George came back, I was still standing at the window. They're coming, he said. What? Thomas's car was very visible. They'll know we hired an investigator. They'll panic, and when people panic, they make mistakes. He was right. 20 minutes later, the black SUV pulled into our driveway. I didn't want to let them in. Every cell in my body screamed to keep the door locked, to pretend we weren't home. But George touched my hand. Let them come, he said. Let them show us everything. So I opened the door. Christian stood there, pale and sweating despite the cool air. Vanessa was behind him, perfectly composed except for her eyes. Her eyes were wild. You hired a private investigator? Christian's voice cracked. To follow my wife? To investigate fraud, George said calmly. The affair evidence was incidental. Incidental? Vanessa pushed past Christian. You invaded our privacy. We protected ourselves, I said, surprised by how steady I sounded. From people who were plotting to steal our home. We weren't stealing anything, Vanessa's voice rose. This is family business. You're supposed to help us. Help you commit fraud? George asked. Help you while your wife cheats on my son? Exactly what kind of help did you expect, Vanessa? She opened her mouth, closed it. For once, she had no response. Christian looked at the floor. How long have you known? About the affair? George asked. Or about your plan to manipulate us out of our house? Both. Long enough to give you chances to come clean. You didn't take them. I was trying to protect my family, Christian said, but the words had no strength behind them. By lying to yours? I asked. He finally looked at me. His eyes were red, exhausted. What did you want me to do, Mom? Divorce her and lose everything? Let Lily grow up in a broken home? Lily is growing up watching her father choose money over honesty, I said softly. That's already broken, Christian. Vanessa laughed, sharp and bitter. This is rich. You two sitting in your paid-off house, your comfortable retirement, judging us for trying to survive. Survive? George walked to his desk, opened a drawer. Is that what this is? He pulled out 2 envelopes. These are for you, he said. Christian took his with shaking hands. Vanessa snatched hers. Open them, George said. Christian opened his first. Inside was a check for $25,000 and a business card for a divorce attorney named Patricia Morrison. What is this? Christian whispered. It's the help you should have asked for 6 months ago, George said. Patricia is the best. She'll protect your parental rights and make sure Lily's taken care of. But you have to want to be helped, son. You have to choose truth over convenience. Vanessa was already tearing open her envelope. Inside was a cease and desist letter, a restraining order application, and a photo of her and Kyle. Her face went white. "Leave our son," George said, his voice like iron. "Or every piece of evidence goes to your family, your employer, and your church group. You have 48 hours. The room seemed to shrink. "You can't do this," Vanessa breathed. "We already did," I said. She turned to Christian. "Say something. They can't blackmail me. Tell them." Christian was staring at the check in his hands, at the attorney's card, at the lifeline his father had thrown him. "Christian!" Vanessa grabbed his arm. He pulled away. "You knew I knew," he said quietly. "What?" "About Kyle. You knew I knew, and you used it. You said we needed this house, needed my parents' money, or we'd lose everything in the divorce you were already planning." Vanessa's mask cracked. "I never said—" "Stop!" Christian's voice broke. "Please just stop." "If you side with them," she said, her voice dropping to something dangerous, "I will take everything, Lily included. I'll tell the court you're unstable, that you—" "I've been recording this conversation," George said calmly. He held up his phone. "Every threat, every lie, add it to the pile, Vanessa." She stared at him, at the phone, at the complete dissolution of her plans. Then she did what cornered animals do. She attacked. She lunged at George, hands reaching for the phone. Christian caught her. "Vanessa, don't." She spun on him instead. "You're weak." "You've always been weak, just like them." She grabbed for the envelope in his hands, tried to tear it. And in that moment, my son did something I hadn't seen him do in years. He stood firm. "Get out," he said. "What?" "Get out of this house. Get out of my life. We're done." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears that looked real, but weren't. "Christian, please." 48 hours, he said, voice shaking but certain. "Like Dad said, you leave or everyone knows everything." For a long moment she just stared at him, then at us, then at the ruins of her plans scattered across our living room floor. "You'll regret this," she whispered. "All of you." "No," I said softly. "I don't think we will." She left without another word. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. Christian stood in the center of the room, the check still in his hands, looking like a man who'd just woken from a nightmare. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "God, I'm so sorry." I wanted to go to him, wanted to hold him like I did when he was small and the world was too big. But George spoke first. "Sorry isn't enough," he said, not unkindly. "You need to make different choices now, son. Better ones." Christian nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I will. I promise. I will." "We'll see," George said. And that was all. No forgiveness, no reconciliation. Just the truth, laid bare and bleeding. After Christian left, I collapsed on the couch. My hands were shaking so hard I had to clasp them together. "Did we just destroy our son's marriage?" I whispered. George sat beside me, took my hands in his. "No, Alice. We just stopped pretending it wasn't already destroyed." Outside, the sun was setting. The apple tree cast long shadows across the lawn. And for the first time in months, the house felt quiet. Not peaceful yet, but quiet. 3 months passed like a held breath finally released. Vanessa moved out in 36 hours, not 48. Christian filed for divorce the following week. We knew because Harold Green, our lawyer, kept us informed. Not because Christian told us himself. He didn't call, didn't text, didn't visit. At first, I checked my phone constantly, hoping. Then weekly. Then I stopped checking altogether. George said it was normal. "He needs to figure out who he is without her," he explained one morning while we drank coffee on the porch. "Give him time." But time felt heavy. Every day without my son's voice was a stone added to a pile I carried in my chest. So we did what we could. We lived. For the first time in a decade, George and I took a trip. We drove to Napa Valley, ironic, I know, the place that expensive wine had come from. But we needed to reclaim it, to turn it into something that belonged to us instead of that terrible Easter Sunday. We toured vineyards. We ate at small restaurants. We walked through towns we'd never seen, holding hands like newlyweds. One night, sitting on a hotel balcony watching the sunset paint the hills gold, George said, "We did the right thing." "I know," I replied, and I did. But knowing something is right doesn't make it hurt less. When we returned home, I joined a writing group at the community center, started putting our story on paper, not to publish, but to understand, to make sense of how love and manipulation could look so similar until you held them up to the light. George started teaching piano to neighborhood kids twice a week, the house filled with the sound of scales and missed notes and laughter. It felt alive again. We built a new normal, smaller, quieter, but ours. Then, on a Tuesday morning in late June, my phone rang. The caller ID said Sarah Mitchell. I didn't recognize the name. "Mrs. Roberts?" A woman's voice, professional but concerned. "This is Sarah Mitchell. I'm the office manager at Christian's firm." My stomach dropped. "Is he all right?" "There's been an accident. Christian was in a car crash about an hour ago. He's at Mercy General Hospital. He listed you as his emergency contact." The world tilted. "How bad?" George was already grabbing the car keys. "Stable, but they're keeping him for observation. Mrs. Roberts, there's a little girl here. She keeps asking for her grandmother." We made it to the hospital in 14 minutes. I don't remember the drive. The emergency room was a blur of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smell. A nurse directed us to the 3rd floor, where Sarah Mitchell was waiting with Lily. "Grandma!" Lily broke away from Sarah and ran into my arms, sobbing. "Grandma, Daddy was crying and then the car went boom and—" "Shh, baby, shh." I held her tight, felt her small body shaking. "You're okay. You're safe now." Over Lily's head, I met Sarah's eyes. She was young, maybe 30, with worry etched across her face. "He was leaving work early," she said quietly. "Said he had somewhere important to be. He seemed upset, emotional." George stepped forward. "Where's my son?" "Room 304. The doctor said he can have visitors." We found Christian in a bed by the window, his right leg in a cast, bandages around his ribs, a bruise blooming purple across his cheekbone. He was asleep, his face turned toward the light. He looked young, vulnerable, like the boy who used to climb into our bed during thunderstorms. I sat in the chair beside him, still holding Lily. George stood at the foot of the bed, his hand resting on Christian's uninjured foot. When Christian's eyes fluttered open 20 minutes later, the first thing he saw was me. "Mom," he whispered. Then his face crumpled. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "Don't," I said softly. "Rest now. We'll talk later." "No." He struggled to sit up, winced. "I need to say this. I was coming to see you. I was finally—" His voice broke. "I was finally brave enough to come home." Lily wiggled out of my arms and climbed carefully onto the bed. "I told you Grandma would come, Daddy." He wrapped his good arm around her, tears streaming down his face. "You did, baby. You were right." That's when Vanessa arrived. She swept into the room like she owned it, designer purse on her arm, makeup perfect despite the emergency. But she was 2 hours late. 2 hours while her daughter had cried for her. "Christian, oh my God, are you—" She stopped when she saw us. Her expression flickered, surprise, annoyance, then a carefully constructed mask of wifely concern. "What are they doing here?" she asked, like we were intruders. "They're my parents," Christian said quietly. "Where were you?" "I came as soon as I heard." "Mommy," Lily Sadie said, her voice small and cold in a way that broke my heart. "I called you 3 hours ago. You said you were busy." Vanessa's jaw tightened. "I was in a meeting, Lily. I came as fast as I could." "You were at Uncle Kyle's," Lily said. "I heard you on the phone. You told him you'd be there soon." The room went silent. Vanessa's face flushed. That's not... Lily, you misunderstood. I'm 8, Mommy. Not stupid. George's hand found my shoulder, squeezed gently. Even in crisis, our granddaughter was braver than all of us. A doctor entered then, clipboard in hand, breaking the tension. Mr. Roberts, I need someone to sign consent forms for your overnight observation. Who's your healthcare proxy? Vanessa stepped forward automatically. I'm his wife. The doctor checked his tablet, frowned. According to our records, you're separated? He looked up. The emergency contact and healthcare proxy listed are Alice and George Roberts. Vanessa's mouth fell open. That's impossible. I'm still legally his... Updated last week, the doctor said. June 15th. Is there a problem? Christian was watching Vanessa, his expression unreadable. No problem, he said. The forms are correct. Vanessa stared at him. When did you... When I finally started making my own decisions, he said quietly. She opened her purse, pulled out her phone like a shield. This is ridiculous. I'm calling my lawyer. The divorce was finalized yesterday, Christian said. You filed, remember? Or did Kyle's promotion make you forget? Her face went white. How did you... Your lawyer copied me on the final papers. Expedited process. You want it out fast. Christian's voice was calm, almost detached. Congratulations, Vanessa. You're free. For once, she had nothing to say. George cleared his throat. I think it's time for you to leave. You can't make me... Actually, the doctor said, consulting his tablet. Only approved visitors are allowed in ICU rooms. If you're not listed as family... Vanessa looked at Christian, waiting for him to defend her, to choose her one more time. He turned his face toward the window. She left without another word, her heels clicking down the hallway like punctuation marks on the end of a sentence. When the room was quiet again, Christian pulled something from the drawer of his bedside table. An envelope, crumpled and stained, like it had been carried in a pocket for a long time. I wrote this 3 weeks ago, he said, handing it to me. I was going to mail it, but I kept chickening out. Then today I decided I had to see you in person. Had to say it to your faces. My hands shook as I opened it. The letter was written on legal pad paper, the handwriting rushed and desperate. Dear Mom and Dad, I'm writing this because I don't have the courage to say it to your faces yet. You were right about everything. Vanessa filed for divorce 2 weeks ago, not because I asked, but because Kyle got a promotion and they're moving to Seattle. She's taking everything except Lily. She doesn't want the responsibility. I lost my wife, my dignity, and almost lost my daughter. But the worst part? I lost you, and that was my choice. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking to be let back in. I just want you to know that everything you did was to protect me, and I was too blind to see it. The money, the house, none of it matters. I just want my parents back. Christian, I pressed the letter to my chest, tears blurring my vision. George leaned down and kissed Christian's forehead. You're still our son, he said, his voice thick. You've always been our son. Even after everything? Especially after everything, I whispered. Because you finally chose truth. That's all we ever wanted. Christian reached for my hand. I don't deserve this. No, George said, you don't. But love isn't about deserving. It's about choosing. And we choose you, the real you, the man brave enough to write that letter. Lily snuggled between us. Does this mean we're a family again? I looked at my son, broken and healing. At my husband, steady as always. At my granddaughter, wise beyond her years. We never stopped being one, sweetheart, I said. We were just lost for a while. 3 months later, on Christmas morning, snow fell soft and steady on Pinehurst Avenue. Our house smelled like cinnamon and pine. Christian had arrived the night before with Lily, carrying grocery bags and a nervous smile. He'd spent 2 hours in the kitchen making his grandmother's stuffing recipe, the one I hadn't made in years. The divorce was finalized. Christian had moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment across town, started therapy twice a week, and joined a single-parent support group. He had Lily every other week and most weekends. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. On Christmas morning, we gathered around the tree, just the four of us. No expensive wine, no designer outfits, no pretending. Christian gave us a photo album titled Our New Chapter. Inside were pictures of him and Lily volunteering at a food bank, pictures of him at therapy, pictures of him learning to cook, making mistakes, laughing at burned cookies. The last page showed him and Lily planting a small apple tree in their apartment complex courtyard. The caption read, "Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave up on myself." I couldn't speak through my tears. "It's not much," Christian said, "but it's a start." "It's everything," George said simply. Then I gave Christian our gift, a small envelope. Inside were keys. "What?" Christian looked up, confused. "It's a condo," I explained. 2 bedrooms, good school district. "Not charity, Christian. An investment. In the man we know you're becoming." "Mom, I can't accept." "You can," George said. "And you will. But you'll pay us back when you're ready. No rush, no pressure. Just family helping family the right way." Christian held the keys like they were made of glass. "I'll pay back every cent." "We know you will," I said. "But for now, just be the father Lily deserves. That's payment enough." Lily opened her gifts, a bicycle, art supplies, books about brave girls. She squealed and laughed and filled our quiet house with noise and life. After dinner, George played piano while Lily sang carols off key. Christian helped me wash dishes, and for a moment it felt like the past year had been a bad dream. "Mom," he said quietly, handing me a plate to dry. "Yes? Do you think you'll ever really forgive me?" I looked at him, my boy, my broken, healing boy, and told him the truth. "I already have," I said, "but earning back trust takes longer than forgiveness. That's something you'll have to work at every day." He nodded. "I will. I promise." "Good, because we're not going anywhere." Spring came again, as it always does. The apple tree in our yard bloomed exactly on schedule, like it had been doing for 34 years. The mailbox still leaned. George still meant to fix it. Some things never change, but some things do. Christian came for dinner every Sunday now. He'd arrive with Lily and sometimes brought dessert he'd made himself. We played board games. We talked. Sometimes about the hard stuff, sometimes about nothing at all. He was building a life, smaller than the one he'd planned with Vanessa, but steadier, truer. One Sunday in April, I found him standing by the living room window, looking at the spot where the wine bottle had shattered. "We replaced that carpet," I said. "I know." He touched the wall where the stain had been. "But I still see it. Sometimes I need to see it, to remember." "Remember what?" "What it cost to lie, and what I got back when I finally told the truth." I stood beside him, our reflections ghostly in the glass. "Your father and I, we wrote you a letter too," I said. "That week after Easter. We never sent it either." "What did it say?" "That we were angry and hurt, but that we'd be here when you were ready. That the door was locked, but we still had the key." Christian's eyes filled. "You kept it open for me." "Always," I said. That's what parents do. Outside, Lily and George were planting flowers along the walkway. Her laughter floated through the open window, bright and unburdened. "She's happy," Christian said. "So are you," I observed. He smiled, and it reached his eyes this time. "Yeah, I actually am." That night after they left, I sat on the porch with George. The air smelled like rain and apple blossoms. "Do you think Vanessa ever regrets it?" I asked. "Does it matter?" "I suppose not." He took my hand. "We didn't lose our family, Alice. We just learned who our family really was." I thought about that, about how sometimes love means setting boundaries, how sometimes kindness means saying no, how sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone fall so they can learn to stand on their own. "We did good," I said finally. "We did?" From inside the house, I heard the old grandfather clock chime 9. The same clock that had marked time through Christian's childhood, through our marriage, through every season of our lives. Time doesn't heal all wounds, but it gives you space to choose what you carry and what you finally set down. I'd set down resentment, guilt, the need to fix everything. What I kept was love, the real kind, the kind that tells the truth even when it hurts, the kind that says, "I'm here" instead of "I told you so," the kind that leaves the door unlocked but doesn't chase anyone through it. As the stars came out one by one over Pinterest Avenue, I thought about the inheritance we'd fought so hard to protect. Not the house or the money or the things we'd accumulated. The real inheritance was this: knowing when to hold on and when to let go, knowing that silence can be power, knowing that peace isn't something you inherit, it's something you build brick by brick, boundary by boundary, truth by truth. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and very brave, the people you love find their way back to you. Not because you forced them, but because you finally gave them space to choose. George squeezed my hand. "Ready to go in?" "Not yet," I said. "Let's stay a little longer." So we sat in the dark, in the quiet we'd fought so hard to reclaim, listening to the apple tree whisper secrets to the wind. And for the first time in a year, I felt something I'd almost forgotten: hope.